Senator John McCain died in Arizona. We heard his last wishes for the country he served and fought for in the form of a farewell letter. McCain wrote in part, "Do not despair of our present difficulties, but believe always in the promise and greatness of America, because nothing is inevitable here. Americans never quit." The senator's friends, colleagues, and loved ones have been saying their own farewells. Republican Senator Jeff Flake gave an emotional tribute to his fellow Arizona lawmaker on the Senate floor Monday.
So, as we say goodbye to John McCain, let us take up his banner. His was always the good fight. We are fortunate to have known him best in Arizona. But he was bigger than any one state. He always belonged to America and to the world. And now he belongs to the ages. Farewell, Senator. Farewell, John. I yield the floor.
In keeping with Senate tradition, McCain's desk in the Senate chamber was draped with black crepe and flowers. McCain died Saturday at the age of 81. He had battled brain cancer for 13 months. CBS News Chief Congressional correspondent Nancy Cordes is in Phoenix.
As tributes poured in from around the world, there was one person who appeared unmoved.
Do you have any thoughts at all about John McCain?
President Trump ignored questions about McCain today, and for most of the day, the White House flag was back at full staff, even as the flags at the U.S. Capitol, per tradition, remained at half staff. White House aides didn't explain, but they didn't have to. The president's feelings about McCain are well documented.
He's a war hero because he was captured. I like people that weren't captured, okay? I hate to tell you.
Across the country in Phoenix, the senator's death drew a very different response.
You respect somebody that much. You never meet him, but you do know about him.
My fellow Americans, whom I have gratefully served for 60 years.
His former campaign manager, Rick Davis, shared McCain's final love letter to the nation.
I've tried to serve our country honorably. I've made mistakes, but I hope my love for America will be weighed favorably against them. I've had experiences, adventures, friendships, enough for 10 satisfying lives, and I am so thankful.
Late this afternoon, the White House flag suddenly returned to half-staff, and the president issued a proclamation requiring that all public buildings and grounds do the same, as it fell to Ivanka Trump to hail McCain in public.
An American patriot who served our country with distinction for more than 6 decades.
On the floor of the U.S. Senate, Georgia Republican Johnny Isakson urged the president to drop his grudge.
But anybody who any way tarnishes the reputation of John McCain deserves a whipping. Because most of the ones who would do the wrong thing about John McCain didn't have the guts to do the right thing when it was their turn.
In his letter, McCain left the nation with this straight talk about our polarized times.
We argue and compete and sometimes even vilify each other in our raucous public debates. But we have always had so much more in common with each other than in disagreement. If only we remember that and give each other the benefit of the presumption that we all love our country, we will get through these challenging times.
Thanks to an understanding between the Trump and McCain families, the president will not be attending McCain's memorial service at the National Cathedral in Washington. Instead, he'll be eulogized by 2 former presidents, Barack Obama and George W. Bush, after he lies in state, Elaine, here at the Arizona State Capitol and at the U.S. Capitol.
Nancy, I know you spent the last couple of days reporting there in Arizona. What is the mood like there now?
It's very somber, Elaine. You know, we all think of John McCain as this national figure, someone who was a prisoner of war, who ran for president twice, was his party's nominee, this stalwart figure in the Senate. But here in Arizona, he is their hometown guy. People know him here. They've seen him on weekends and at town halls. He was incredibly accessible. He was somebody who never stayed still. He went to a lot of events, and clearly he was quite personal unreasonable. So it really feels like a personal loss for folks here in Arizona, even those who didn't know him that well. And so we've seen a lot of grief here, and a lot of people who know McCain, know the McCain family, and who truly feel that it is an end of an era in Arizona politics.
Nancy, you mentioned the senator's former campaign manager, Rick Davis, read a farewell letter written by Senator McCain. Now, the senator did not mention President Trump by name, but is it fair to read the senator's last words as a rebuke of the current political atmosphere under this president?
Sure, and wasn't it like John McCain to have the last word? Right. He didn't come right out and call out President Trump, but it's something that has clearly been on his mind in recent months. He has spoken about it publicly before, and when he talked about the fact that we need to tear down walls between each other instead of building them up, that was obviously a reference to the president. And more broadly, the discourse going on in the country, that was something that McCain felt pretty strongly about. Yes, he could be hot-tempered, he could be passionate, he could call people out, but it always had to do with the issues, and he made up with a lot of them pretty quickly as well. On the floor of the U.S. Senator, the leader, Mitch McConnell, who, while he is a Republican, got into some pretty tough battles with McCain over the years, most notably over campaign finance and Obamacare. He himself said that while he often clashed with McCain, he was very glad that at the end of the day, they were never in separate dugouts. They were always on the same team. And I think a lot of senators who clashed with McCain from time to time felt the same way.
And Nancy, you mentioned the funeral arrangements and the eulogies that will be delivered by former Presidents Obama and George W. Bush. What do the funeral arrangements say about John McCain's legacy as both a legislator and a war hero?
They say a lot about how carefully McCain himself thought about his legacy and how he wanted to be remembered, because we know that he was very intimately involved in planning out every last detail of this week of memorial services, right down to who was going to speak, what they were going to say, what kind of music you would hear, what kind of poems would be read. He wanted to send a very deliberate message to the country about who he was and what was important to him. The fact that he is lying in state here at the Arizona Capitol and the U.S. Capitol, Elaine, also speak volumes about his stature in this country. He's going to be only the 35th person in nearly 200 years to receive that honor at the U.S. Capitol. So this is something that is reserved only for extremely important citizens, people who will go down as important figures in history. And clearly, the leaders of the House and Senate believe that he was one of those people, because they have made the special request that he be allowed to lie in state later this week.
A really remarkable figure. Well, as you know, there's been an outpouring of support from both sides of the aisle. Senator Chuck Schumer introduced a resolution Monday to rename the Russell Senate Office Building after Senator McCain. Nancy, how likely is it that that effort will be successful?
I can tell you that there's a lot of interest in it, and Jeff Flake, who's the junior senator from Arizona, who really admired John McCain, tried to model himself after McCain in some ways, said he wants to be the first Republican co-sponsor of that resolution. He had his offices in the Russell Senate Office Building, and so did McCain. So there's a lot of support, especially among Democrats who don't necessarily believe that former Senator Russell deserves the name that he has on that building. They think that it would be very fitting to put McCain's name up there as well. And time will tell whether this resolution gains some legs. It has some bipartisan support, we're still waiting to hear how the Senate's majority leader, Mitch McConnell, who would be the one to allow a vote on the floor, feels about it.
All right, Nancy Cordes reporting from Arizona for us. Nancy, thank you.
You're welcome.